I rise to present AB 1500, which seeks to close the elective single sales factor provision in the tax code and instead bring California law into line with states like New York, Texas, New Jersey, and Michigan in applying a mandatory sales factor formula. AB 1500 is the companion piece to AB 1501, which together comprise the Middle Class Scholarship Act. AB 1501 was passed by the Assembly prior to our summer recess. This measure fundamentally speaks to the question of tax fairness for California businesses. The 2009 budget agreement placed the elective single sales factor into California law and effectively created a perverse incentive for businesses to create jobs outside of California rather than in the state of California. This has placed California-based businesses like Qualcomm and Genentech, who employ thousands of Californians, at a competitive disadvantage to their out-of-state competitors. By closing the elective single sales factor, we can create tax fairness and end the backward policy of sending $1 billion out of California economy to corporations that take jobs out of our state. Instead, we will return $1 billion to middle-class Californians and invest in our future with a middle-class scholarship, which will cut student fees by 2/3 at UC and CSU, as well as provide critical relief for the community college system. As the Rev and Tax Committee analysis so succinctly put it, quote, an elective single sales factor formula is tax expenditure that contains no requirement to invest or create jobs in the state, no accountability measures, no paper trail for the state to review, and no records about the outcomes in any specific company or industry, end quote. The Nonpartisan Legislative Analyst's Office has called for the elimination of the elective single sales factor loophole, saying it would put California into conformity with other large states that keep California firms from being put at a competitive disadvantage. Or as George Skelton described, as only he can, quote, you might think that a tax law that rewards companies for killing California jobs and resurrecting them in another state would be dumped very quickly, end quote. We spent a lot of time on the elective single sales factor issue last year, including 5.5 months of debate as part of the governor's budget proposal. And at the end of session last year, the Assembly successfully passed with a 2/3 vote a revenue-neutral bill that closed the loophole, instead provided tax relief for California. AB 1500 continues the effort of helping California businesses compete and does so again in a revenue-neutral manner by using the revenues generated by closing the loophole to cut fees. AB 1500 is supported by some of California's largest and most important businesses, including Qualcomm and Genentech, who stand to benefit from tax fairness in our laws in the short term and by ensuring a well-educated workforce and restoring accessibility and affordability to higher education at UC and CSU. This is a dramatic reinvestment and opportunity for Californians and will help California businesses remain competitive while ensuring California's middle-class families have the same opportunities to succeed as our generation had. It has been interesting to listen to some of the objections that have been raised. One objection was we need stability for at least 2 years, and we've only done this for 2 years. Well, it seems that that achieved the outcome that the individual wanted. It got them their 2 years. Stability is not a good thing if it's moving you in the wrong direction. If you are getting kicked in the teeth by other states on a regular basis, and somebody is trying to change that so they stop kicking you in the teeth, the stability of continuing to get kicked is not an ideal outcome. That's really the situation that we have here. There had been a long discussion about single sales factor prior to the vote in 2009. All of it was predicated on creating both a predictable system of taxation and one that was fair. And fairness has to be seen in the eyes of making sure that you don't create a situation whereby you put growth of jobs in the state of California at a disadvantage vis-a-vis growth of jobs outside of the state of California. That's what happened. Now, I voted against that bill in 2009. And I voted against it in 2009 because of the problems we've seen since. Because we knew that it would create an incentive for job growth outside of the state. Now, we're recovering from the greatest economic crisis since the Great Depression. Last month, we grew at a rate where half of all the jobs created in the country were created here in California. And we did that despite the fact that our tax code incentivizes growth elsewhere. Our prosperity in the future depends on a variety of factors. First and foremost, fairness for states that actually want to invest in the state of California. Now, what's interesting is that many of the people who've risen to oppose this measure and who've said it's undoing a deal didn't say, and I voted for that deal. They didn't say, I voted for that deal, I voted for that budget, I voted for something that would create some sort of a solution. And the reason is that in many cases, then as now, it was easier to say no. It was easier to raise the specter of a problem and the specter of fear. It was easier to say that I stand against anything that raises taxes anywhere than it was to sit and have a reasoned discussion about what the appropriate tax policy for our state is. This is a rational approach. It's an approach that incentivizes that which we should prioritize, growth within our state. But then the question is, what else can we do to create that growth? And one of the greatest things we could do is invest in education. We know that the prosperity of the state has been tied to the success of our public university systems, our great research institutions. When you look at that which has made innovation so successful in California, it's the co-location of business and great centers of education. This allows us to build on that tradition. The PPIC just issued a study that said that by 2025, California will be short anywhere from 1 to 1.3 million bachelor degree holders. Why? Because we haven't kept pace with the promise. Last Friday, I was in San Diego with our nonpartisan colleague, and we were speaking at Genentech, at Qualcomm, with a variety of other business leaders and student leaders. And there was a student there who had to take a long break in his education because he got caught in that squeeze in the middle. He had over $42,000 of debt. He had maxed out all the debt that you can take. And he had to work 30 to 40 hours a week while he was going to school in order to get this education. He's now finished his undergraduate degree and working on his graduate degree. But he would already be able to be an incredibly productive member of our economy had it not been for this incredible squeeze that we're putting on middle-class families. We know that the nexus is real in terms of where we should be investing right now. Nationally, student loan debt has surpassed $1 trillion, larger than consumer credit card debt. Such a crisis that it's one of the few issues that President Obama and Governor Romney agree on. They came together and said that we needed to address that problem and make sure that interest rates on those students didn't increase. This gives us the chance to do something better. It gives us the chance to create tax fairness, to allow for California businesses to have a fair shot, to allow for California businesses to have a tax policy that allows them to grow here instead of elsewhere, and that invests in the very future of what makes this state great by making sure that we keep the promise of affordability and access to higher education. One of my colleagues said that he supports the notion of the single sales factor, but he questions why we've directed it to this specific population. And the reason is because this is the population that's got squeezed. Students at lower income levels have been able to be protected from the impact of the fee increases by virtue of our commitment to the Cal Grant system, a commitment that we've maintained. Students above this level, which is a very small percentage of our population, have been able to absorb the cost because they have the financial means to do it. It's students in the middle that have gotten squeezed. So not only does this give us tax fairness for businesses in California, it gives us fee fairness for middle-class families. Make sure that we take care of them in the way that we've been able to take care of poorer families.